Alright, we're back, everybody. I thought it only fitting that I climb a tree in order to finish this lovely little story up. So here I am, pretty far up a tree. So if I don't make it down, I just want to say it's been a great semester with you guys. I've had a marvelous time with you in the virtual classroom, reading your papers, so it's just been a real pleasure. So thanks a lot. Alright, we left off. Sylvie had spent the day out with the hunter, the boy, the ornithologist, whatever we're calling him, and she goes to sleep that night. She gets up early. She heads out to find him, the white heron. And she walks a half a mile from home at the farther edge of the woods where the land was highest. A great pine tree stood, the last of its generation. All the others had probably been cut down for manufacturing and such, burning and building. And she's ready to climb the great pine. And she goes up and up and up and up and up and up. And there's this great little line here. Alas, if the great wave of human interest which flooded for the first time this dull little life should sweep away the satisfactions of an existence heart to heart with nature and the dumb life of the forest. And dumb here means can't speak, right? The woods can't literally speak. It doesn't mean stupid or anything like that. To the old original use of the word dumb, which means sort of mute. So this is the suspenseful moment of the story, and this is the main question of the story. Will the great wave of human interest, that's her romantic interest in the boy, which flooded her for the first time, will that sweep away the satisfaction? So the two things here, right? The struggle we talked about. Sylvie's interest in the boy, and that's in the same column as the industrial town, science, killing nature and studying it, right? And the other part, having a harmonic existence with nature, not killing it, understanding it, playing in it, and just sort of going with the flow of life instead of the more manufactured industrial town science stuff. You may recall Emily Dickinson had a great poem about science, sort of pro-science, right? Pro-microscope, which is better than God when you really need to study something closely. And of course Poe had the anti-science poem because it was ruining everything for poets. But at any rate, so Sylvie climbs the pine tree. And, you know, I'm just going to cut right to it here. There is, to me anyway, and you could argue against this, there's something definitely sexual about the way she goes, her relationship with this pine tree. There was the huge pine tree asleep yet in the palling moonlight. That's pretty sexy. And small and silly Sylvia began with utmost bravery to mount to the top of it, with tingling, eager blood coursing the channels of her whole frame, with her bare feet and fingers that pinched and held like birds' claws to the monstrous ladder, reaching up, up, almost to the sky itself. First, she must mount the white oak tree that grew alongside, where she was almost lost among the dark branches and the green heavy leaves, heavy and wet with dew. Whew, geez, hot stuff. A bird fluttered off its nest, and a red squirrel ran to and fro and scolded pettishly at the harmless housebreaker. Sylvia felt her way easily. She had often climbed there, and knew that higher still up one of the oak's branches reached and chafed against the pine trunk, just where its lower boughs were set close together. There, where she made the dangerous pass from one tree to the other, great enterprise would really begin. So yeah, that was just the foreplay, I guess, now that she gets up into the pine tree. But this is a big moment, right? This is a threshold moment. She goes from one tree to the next. She's going from girlhood to womanhood in this story. The tree seemed to lengthen itself out as she went up, and to reach farther and farther upward. It was like a great main mast to the young voyaging earth. It must truly have been amazed that morning through all its ponderous frame, as it felt this determined spark of human spirit winding its way from higher branch to branch. Who knows how steadily the least twigs held themselves to advantage this light, weak creature on her way. The old pine must have loved his new dependent, more than all the hawks and bats and moths and etc., etc. And then she gets to the top, and this is so beautiful. She becomes, oh well, you know, she kicks back and smokes a cigarette in her sort of post-orgasmic moment. But it's also quite beautiful. Not that there's not anything beautiful about that. Sylvia's face was like a pale star. So she's at the top of the pine tree. Kind of think of a Christmas tree this time of year. She's at the top of the pine tree, and she's almost cosmic, right? She's part of this great universe. Her face is like a pale star. If one had seen it from the ground, when the last thorny bough was past, and she stood trembling and tired, but wholly triumphant high in the treetop. And she sees the world, right? They're gray feathers of the moths. They're just a little way from the tree. She's in the clouds, right? It's beautiful. She can see the ships out at sea. I mean, this is a really tall tree, and it's in a high spot, and she can see all the way to the ocean and the ships at sea. Now, the ships, that's sort of the older way of life from Sarah Orne Jewett's childhood before big factories started to come in. And she sees the heron, right? And this heron sits on a branch near her, and the heron calls to its mate. And she thinks about over and over how the stranger will receive this information, right? She sees the white heron, two of them actually. And you know, she's got to tell him straight away where the heron's nest is. And you're thinking, is she going to throw the heron under the bus here? Really? Is she going to throw the heron under the bus? And as she gets home, she hears Grandma calling, Sylvie, Sylvie. And the boy knows it, right? The boy knows it. She must really be made to tell, he thinks to himself. He looks her in the eyes. But Sylvia does not speak after all, though the old grandmother fretfully rebukes her, and the young man's kind, appealing eyes are looking straight in her own. He can make them rich with money. He has promised it, and they are poor now. He is so well worth making happy, and he waits to hear the story she can tell. What did you think? I read this story for the first time in the fall of 1989, right? Most of you were not even alive. I can't remember what I was thinking then, but I wish I could ask all of you, did you think she was going to tell or not tell? No, she must keep silence. Whew. And here's the other central question. It's kind of the same as the first central question. What is it that suddenly forbids her and makes her dumb? Dumb as in quiet, not speaking. Has she been 9 years growing, and now in the great world for the first time puts out a hand to her? Must she thrust it aside for a bird's sake? So the new world, boys, science, money. The murmur of the pine's great branches is in her ears. She remembers how the white heron came flying through the golden air, and how they watched the sea in the morning together. And Sylvia cannot speak. She cannot tell the heron's secret and give its life away. So we're wrapping up a lot of themes in this story, right? We talked about science, right? And this story is, I wouldn't call it anti-science, but the ornithologist is sort of not the bad guy, but what he represents. And remember, when we used to talk a lot about whether humans were a part of nature or apart from nature. Well, the boy here and industrialization and science in this story is apart from, right? Kill it, study it. She is a part of nature, right? She is Sylvia. She is of the woods. She is in harmony with the trees and with the white heron, and she's going to stick with that. She's not giving nature up for the boy. So Sarah Orne Jewett definitely sets up a choice here. Dear loyalty. Now there's this real lot of irony here. Dear loyalty that suffered a sharp pang as the guest went away disappointed later in the day. That she could have served and followed him and loved him as a dog loves, right? So there's a certain irony that's not so vague here. You know, women should not serve and follow and love their man as a dog loves. Although I used to have a dachshund and he was the boss, but that's not what we're talking about here. Many a night Sylvia heard the echo of his whistle haunting the pasture path as she came home with the loitering cow. She forgot even her sorrow at the sharp report of his gun and the sight of thrushes and sparrows dropping silent to the ground. And the final line of this story is so beautiful. Bring your gifts and graces and tell your secrets to this lonely country child, right? Tell your secrets to her. She'll keep them for you. She won't betray you. She knows what she could have had, right? She knows what she could have had, but I think she's satisfied at the end with her choice to stay true to nature, true to her friends, the birds. So very interesting story. It's a story of a girl growing up and hitting that age. Yeah, 9 seems a little young, but you know, you grew up a lot faster in those days. And it's a story, as I said, about the sort of modern world, industrialization, science, as represented by a man here, and the old world, right? Grandma on a farm, chickens, 1 cow, you know, really subsistence farming. And clearly Sarah Orne Jewett is on the side of the old world and not the new world. So really a nice little story, kind of a weird little story, but I really like it. It's sort of warm and cute, but also quite clever, I think, and also quite advanced for, I think, the veiled sort of sexual references when she's climbing up those trees. So thank you very much, Sarah Orne Jewett, for writing A White Heron, and we'll see you back in class, everybody.